Coming to you from the campus of Utah Tech University in St. George, Utah, this is 70 is the New 50, a podcast on how to be vigorously alive as we age. Creator Jan Graham Hunt is joined by her co-host Wendy King. And now, 70 is the New 50.
Welcome to 70 is the New 50. This podcast is brought to you by the Institute of Continued Learning, where we hold 60-plus classes each semester geared to lifelong learners on the Utah Tech University campus. It is our privilege to be part of the Live Long, Live Well initiative in our community. And our episode today is entitled The Art of Working Together and Write Your Way to Vitality. The setting for our recording, we are in the podcast room run by Sean Denovan on the Utah Tech University campus in gorgeous St. George, Utah, the gateway to Zion National Park and other unique national wonders of the West. I'm your host today, Wendy King, a member of the Institute of Learning Council and a lover of learning and living vitally at any age. I'm joined today by Hugh Cannon, a member and instructor of classes at ICL, and I call him a purveyor of wisdom. Welcome, Hugh.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
And let me just talk a little bit about Hugh. Hugh spent his career as the endowed professor of marketing at Wayne State University, and before that had stints at Northwestern and Miami University. He holds a PhD and an MBA from the Stern School of Business at NYU and received his undergraduate degree from BYU. Currently, he is an emeritus professor. So let's get to it. Hugh, besides your academic accolades, tell us more about yourself and why you are now dedicating yourself to writing about something that's really not in your classic topic area.
Well, you know, I think that it's probably a little closer than it may seem. The passion of my life has really been to understand what's going on around me and to make things better. And frankly, marketing, as I conceive of it, is what is the science of making resources available to people that will help them be more satisfied with life. And so that in many ways applies to government. When you look at the country we live in, we get together and we give up a certain amount of freedom to have the freedom and opportunities that we wouldn't have otherwise because we can work together as a group.
And so did you decide to write on that topic because of this, I'm going to call it a higher calling, really, than just marketing itself?
Yeah, I was not motivated by marketing per se. Marketing was a means to an end. I just want to make the world better. And this has been my lifelong struggle, is how to do that and why aren't things working? How do we fix them?
That's great. And so in the writing that you're doing, I know you've shared with me a couple chapters of a book that you're working on. One takeaway I had from it was your suggestion to frame issues at sort of a higher level with abstraction. Can you give us an example of the benefit of that way of thinking, or tell us what you mean by taking it to a higher level?
Yeah, certainly. Actually, it's something I struggle with. So let me share a quick story of how it happened to me. That I'm kind of an environmentalist, as many of us are. We're concerned, but I'm also always looking for something that I don't agree with that makes sense, so I can learn from. And I saw this book that got really good reviews called Fossil Future, and so I read it. And this guy Alex Epstein, who wrote it, fascinated me. He said, you know, everybody realizes we have an environmental crisis. The problem is when you talk about a crisis, everybody goes to general quarters and they try and solve it and they forget everything else because it's a priority. Well, the problem is we also have an energy crisis, which is absolutely essential to solve if you're going to solve the environmental crisis. And and so what he argues is, rather than fighting about our pet projects, let's go to a higher level and let's talk about how do we get together to help human flourishing. And to do that, we have to solve both problems. Now we're working together to solve it because we have that in common.
And you're talking about flourishing as opposed to your way to, like in our family, we just put on solar panels. That's not the answer. You're talking about the challenge at a human level. That's fascinating to me. That's great. And I guess one of your goals, would you say, is to bolster our confidence that improvement and progress is possible? What is that kind of one of the aims of your writing?
Yes, I think so. That's the big problem, is how do you sell the idea? But I guess I accept almost as axiomatic that people are smart, and in the end, they'll figure out a better way. If you look at the history of the world, for all the horrible things, I mean, look at the wars we've had, and even the wars we have now. But I was really influenced by this guy named Steven Pinker at Harvard, who wrote a couple books on this, and he statistically looked, and by every measurement of major things, life is better now, not just better, but better by orders of magnitude than it's ever been before. Less poverty, less violence per unit volume, and so forth. And so I think that's because we work together, and we found that that's better than working separately and better than fighting on the whole.
And I mean, in the writing that you're doing, as you're progressing writing about this, have you discovered ways to make it easier for people to work together to solve problems?
Well, yeah, it's a work in progress for sure. I mean, I look around you.
You don't have the magic bullet yet. You haven't quite figured that out, or
but another author I've been impressed with is Jonathan Haidt, and he's a social psychologist. But having studied this, his theory is what he calls moral foundations theory. He says everybody basically agrees on some basic values, but where they differ is how they apply to specific situations, and so our biases, our prejudices, and everything are reinforced by all the people around us. And so some people are really concerned about taking care of the poor, and other people are very concerned about making sure that people are incentivized to take care of themselves, because if you help them, then they're not, then they'll be dependent, and that's not good for them. So they have those differences, and so he says the minute you say something, people are going to come up with an answer and say this is the right and that's wrong, and you ask them why, and everything they say is a rationalization of the position they've already taken. So anyway, here's the payoff.
Okay.
What he says is the way to solve that problem is you say, look, we've got a border crisis, and they resonate. Yeah, we've got a border crisis, and said, oh man, and you got to have a rule of law and so forth. But then I look at the Statue of Liberty and give us your poor and you're tired, and then I look at the fact that we have needs for more people. The demographics indicate that. And I'm just trying to, so help me out. How do we reconcile those? Now suddenly you're on the same team.
Oh, so you kind of put the issues together as if they're both challenges on the same side, something like that.
Yeah, you resonate with their values
Okay.
that they glum in on, and then you say, yeah, we share those values. So how do we do this?
Yeah, that's finding what you have in common. So tell us a little bit about why you decided to write about this.
Well, actually,
I mean, as opposed to give a a lecture on marketing to, or continue doing that every once in a while to college students. Why are you doing this now?
Well, it actually started out here at in the Institute for Continuing Learning. I was doing a course. Well, okay, here's the problem. I was befuddled by what I call the certainty paradox, that you have these really good people, smart, well-educated, sincere people, and they have views which are logically inconsistent. If one's true, the other cannot be. And yet they're both absolutely convinced they're correct. Now, how do you have good, honest, sincere people who hold logically impossible conclusions? And so I started wrestling with that. I taught a course called Unbundling the News, where we wrestled with those issues. And then I said, well, gee, I need to really work on this and write it. So that's how it started.
Great. I love that. And you want to tell folks that might be interested in, I'm writing a novel now, and I've done some work on how to motivate myself to write. But if you're doing something that's nonfiction and so close to your heart, how are you, do you have discipline around your writing, or how are you getting it done? Or are you getting it done?
Well, the answer is it's a lot harder than, as you know, as an author. And I haven't even tried the fiction yet. I think a novel would be a much better way to do it, because then they live these values, they feel so much. But I'm not even going to try that yet. But what happens in practice is it flows and I write, and then bang, I come across an issue and I'm saying, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. This is not logical. And I stew for 2 weeks just talking and writing and reading and trying to, and then it comes and I say, nirvana, and write it some more, and then I hit another block.
Wow. And do you do it daily, or do you have a routine, or you have it with your afternoon tea, or?
No, I don't have a writing routine. I know lots of writers talk about, I'm going to do at least 4 hours a day, and I've found that doesn't work for me. I do a lot of my writing laying down, taking a nap, rehearsing in my mind. So I'm writing in my mind, and then I have it buzzing there, so I sit down to start to write it, but then I hit another one of these and I watch a bunch of YouTube videos of people talking about the subject and that. So it's not as organized as it may seem.
And do you feel like we have any particular challenges at this, whatever we want to call it, quarter, third, interesting part of our life? Do you think it helps us write, or do you think do you feel like it's very different than when you were writing, and that was probably formal, than you were younger at a...
Well, in many ways, it doesn't change. I've been doing it for my whole career, and I loved it, and it was relatively well received. So the difference, well, there are a couple differences.
I love the differences.
One of the differences is I can do whatever I want. So I can pursue topics, whether the school or the department or the editor or whatever, whether they like it or not. That's not my problem. So that's one biggie.
Wow.
The other thing is that I know a lot more. And maybe the third thing, and I'm not plugging a product, which I have no interest in, but I discovered audible.com and YouTube, and I discovered I can listen to those things at double speed.
Say that again, double speed. What is that?
Well, the recording, there's a little icon where you can tell it to have regular speed, 1.25, 1.5, 2.0, and I found 2.0 is about the maximum I can do, but that works very well. It becomes pretty normal to me. So I have my exercise routine. I go to the pool every morning, and I tread water and do those weights for 2 hours, and I get 4 hours of study and 2 hours of exercise for a 2-hour investment. You can't beat that.
Wow, that's great. I love that. It's interesting you said that, and you talked a little bit about swimming, but I did a little research, and M. Cecil Smith wrote an article entitled "The Benefits of Writing" about how linguist Walter Ong observed that writing is necessary to help the human mind achieve its full potential. The National Commission on Writing stipulates writing allows the author to write to concretize, that's a big word, abstract ideas and to connect the dots in their knowledge. Have you found that to be true?
Oh, absolutely. I watch a lot of podcasts with Jordan Peterson, and he's kind of a little more aggressive than I would be, but his whole idea is that we have spent our life as a society and individually trying to figure out what it's all about. And you can kind of absorb that, and then you become, like Jonathan Haidt described, you internalize this, snap to the grid kind of approach. But it makes more sense as you think about and as you wrestle with issues. I just yesterday had a session with my friend ChatGPT where I was trying to derive the rationale behind string theory. And I just asked a whole series of questions. And by golly, it was just unfolding. That's just the process of thinking and trying. And then I tried to write that and send it to my buddies to see if I got it right.
Wow, that's great. I know there's also evidence that writing can help you improve your memory and even your physical health. One study with controlled subjects showed lung function improved when patients were assigned to write for 4 months. Do you think that the act of writing is helping you live more vitally?
Well, I don't know. I would like it to help my memory. But I think the whole idea of sorting things out, it gets rid of the dissonance in your mind, which is an antagonist to healthy thinking. I read a couple books, and they said the big three were exercise, diet, and attitude. But attitude is having a positive view of life, which comes in large part by having it make sense. You're trying to work it all out, so you're not conflicted with all these weird ideas that don't make sense to you. So it's a process, but I think that makes sense to me, what you said.
I think, just thinking about it, it's interesting how when you do write, it forces you to be concise in a lot of ways. Yeah. You have to get your thoughts down in a typical English sentence, and, we do have a structure around that. So I have found that does help me sort of, focus in or try to be more clear in what I'm communicating.
Oh, yeah. I so resonate with what you're saying. It's I really think I understand it, and then I start to write it, and I say, "Oh no."
Or I think the other thing is, one of the techniques I use is I read it back to myself, which then helps me clarify the writing even more, because when I read it, I go, "What is that? What am I saying here?" So, do you do that? Is that a practice that you've used?
Oh, absolutely. And I'll go back over stuff I've written that was so brilliant when I wrote it, and change it, and then I come back and on a third try and a fourth and a fifth try, and each time. In the end, it does come out better. But you say it's wonderful, and it is wonderful. But boy, it's painful.
It is, isn't it? You're like, what is going on here? Can you give us another example from your writing about ways that society, even two maybe different larger societies, learn to try to come together to solve a problem? Maybe not so much on an individual small group, or maybe it does happen just at a small group level.
Well, there's, of course, been a lot of research on that if you get people together or you do role-playing where you take each other's positions, there are all kinds of exercises that can do that. I'm, of course, because that's what I'm doing right now, is wrestling with a political issue. And I think what we really need to do is, I call it democracy's dilemma. We shouldn't elect people that are appealing to our emotions and villainizing, because that's how you get elected. But then when they come in office, they're fighting with each other, and we expect them to, but it's not very productive. That we need to develop a culture to do what you were talking about, to get people to listen to other people and empathize and understand. And I don't have any magic bullet, but there are exercises you can do to cause that to happen. And I would like to see us incorporate that into our national culture.
That would be, I know in my working career, one of the things that really helped me develop empathy for other folks was when we would go into a session, even on one-on-one, you would ask them about their personal interests or things that are important to them. And I'll just never forget that, with one of the employees that I worked with that seemed to be somewhat distant and closed off, it turned out that her son was dealing with she had a young son that had a heart issue. And she was really frightened about, his survival rate. And she was having to deal as a parent with all his healthcare issues. But when she came to work, she wanted to just block that out. She needed some relief. But for me not to understand that, so I was it really helped me communicate more effectively with her, to understand, hey, she's dealing with things I don't even know about. And, it was wonderful. So I don't know how you do that on a larger societal scale, but maybe you just start doing it one-on-one, and then you learn about the cultures and the challenges one group of people have versus the other, and to try to get to that point. I don't know what your thoughts are about that.
Well, I'm a big believer in the Fourth Estate or whatever, that people are cynical about the media, but I think the news, good professional news people should be able to do that, should be able to bring out those stories and in a way that resonates. But what you're saying is so profound. I really think it has to be done, and it's difficult. When I was teaching my class here one time, I had a friend of mine sit in and, to be sort of the truth checker. So I was giving my talk on the media, and he stood up and he said, "No, okay, the media is not selling truth; they're selling dopamine." So there's that danger, because we do need to have professional people who believe in what they're doing and not saying what we want to hear. And I'm not sure how to bring that about. I have some ideas, but I think that's a challenge.
Well, that gives us something to think about, huh?
Yeah.
Although I don't mind a little dopamine every once in a while. It wakes me up,
Well, I get dopamine when I see it done well.
There you go. So just quickly back to the writing. Do you, for somebody who wants to start writing, do you have any tips on what they might do to just start writing?
Yeah, write, and then
just write,
and then get feedback.
Okay.
Feedback's the hardest thing for me, because I feel like I'm imposing on people to ask them to read my writing or whatever, and so it's really easy to sort of get inside your own head and bounce the ideas around, and that's not what you need.
That's really, just take it in little chunks and start it, and then be brave enough to show it to somebody. I think that does make a lot of
yeah.
sense. Well, I'll read yours. Well, I read a little of yours. I don't know. I'm a little scared to give you mine. I don't know. We'll see.
I want yours because I want somebody to take mine and translate it into fiction.
Oh, all right. There we go. We got a deal going here.
To live the narrative.
Oh, that's wonderful. And then, Hugh, for people that are interested in the topic that you're really talking about, how to really, I'm going to call it how to work together or get along and solve problems. How do they get a hold of you? How would they find out more? How can they reach you?
Well, that's a couple good questions, but I'll make it quick. I mean, certainly they could email me. My problem is how do you flag the emails with all the other stuff that comes through and get that? But I'm always looking for feedback. I think that one thing I would love to see, and you're involved in this, and that is through ICL, that we have some kind of a forum that we could put together where we have discussions online and blogs and so forth linked to the curriculum perhaps, but also of just ideas. We're in the business of creating forum for ideas.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping something like that would happen.
Right.
So I don't have a good answer because it's so hard to connect with, the people that you want to connect with and that want to connect with you.
Well, great. At the end of the podcast, we will put a link to your email, if that's okay with you. And then I think the way to differentiate it for the community, if in the title they put 70 is the new 50, you'll know it's a result of this podcast.
Great idea.
Does that work?
Yeah.
Great. Good. All righty. Well, Hugh, it's been wonderful having you as a guest today. And I'd like to close with a couple of quotes that I think sum up our discussion today. Here's one. I write entirely to find out what I am thinking, what I am looking at, and what I see, and what it means, what I want, and what I fear. That's from Joan Didion. And here is a quote from the first chapter of your book that you shared with me. To live virtually, we have to be able to listen and to learn from those who disagree with us. And that's from Jonathan Haidt? Haidt is how you say his name. Well, great. Well, that's a wrap today. And thank you to our guest, Hugh Cannon, and all of you for joining us for 70 is the New 50. Stay curious, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us on 70 is the New 50. Don't miss future episodes for inspiring and eye-opening discussions about living a fully engaged life as we age. We'll see you next time on 70 is the New 50. This has been a production from a podcast studio.